The official Saturday box office numbers for Avengers Endgame re-release are out, and it has a reported $2,289,000. Now, if this was a normal movie release and not this re-release they're doing, that would be a pretty bad result. It's a 23% increase from Friday to Saturday. You really want something like a 50% increase to show that the film has got a fairly good viewing. It's getting fairly good legs. It's not really dying off very quickly. So if you look at some of the other films here, Men in Black International, number 6 here on the list, slightly more money than Avengers Endgame. It got a 42% increase from Friday to Saturday. If you look right at the top, Toy Story 4, it only got a 35% increase. That's fairly poor for Toy Story 4. The second film here, that's something we don't really want to look at. That's a film that's just been released. So it had some advanced screen money in its Friday total. So this 15% increase is saying that Saturday earned 15% more than Thursday and Friday combined. And if that was the case here for the Avengers Endgame release, which I don't think it was, if it had some advanced screenings on Thursday, then a 23% increase if advanced screenings are in the Friday box office isn't that bad. But I don't believe there was a Thursday release for this extra features or whatever it is, the extra scenes at the end of the credits. So 23%, not a great result. Again, if it was a normal release. This isn't a normal release. It does look like most re-releases bleed money pretty quickly. So in that sort of regards, it's retained quite a bit of money. And so the $2.2 million is fairly good news because it's re-release. But if it wasn't a re-release, it wouldn't be a good sign at all. So with the Saturday number and the Sunday official projections, the total right now for Avengers Endgame is $2,761,318,161. And that's made up of an estimated $1.92 billion from the international market. So how much money does it need to beat Avatar, and does this mean it's going to beat Avatar? Well, as I keep saying in most of these videos, there's two figures for Avatar floating out there. Box Office Mojo has a figure out there, and thenumbers.com has a figure out there for how much money they earned. There is about an $11 million discrepancy in their international box office figures. It would be nice if Disney maybe could come out and clear things up a little bit, which one's the real number. I have a suspicion that the larger number is the correct number, but I've been using the smaller number because it didn't look like it was going to beat that, so no real sense in using the bigger number if it can't even beat the smaller number. But if we do use the smaller of these two figures, there's only $15 million left until Endgame overtakes Avatar. So that's all the gap is now after this fairly big result here it's just had from its re-release. So $15 million more, and it becomes the number one biggest film ever, perhaps, or maybe it needs another $11 million over that to actually beat the larger of these two Avatar figures. If you look at this chart once again, we have the last 5 weeks or so of the Endgame box office compared to the same point in time for Infinity War, which is where they started to earn the same amount of money in the US domestic market. And then for about a week, they earned about the same kind of money. And then for the last 4 weeks, Endgame has earned only about 75% of the money that Infinity War has earned. And it's been fairly consistent, and you've been able to do really good predictions as to what Endgame will get day to day and week to week based on a 75% of what Infinity War did, except for the last 3 days. So you can see very clearly here what's happened on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday with the Endgame re-release. The blue line just spikes right up there, and you really can't use Infinity War anymore to predict what's going to happen with Endgame. So from here on out, very difficult to know what's going to happen, other than it's earning more money than it looked like it was going to earn. So I know how much money it looked like it was going to earn. It's going to get more than that. Is it enough to beat Avatar? Here we have the Sunday to Sunday weekly earnings in the international market for Avengers Endgame. And for the past week, it's just gotten a reported $4.9 million internationally. And the previous week, Sunday to Sunday, was $3.1 million. And so I thought it was looking like it'll probably get $2 million or less than $2 million this week. And it got $4.9 million, which is a 141% increase from the previous week. So instead of about halving the money, which is roughly what it did, and it's roughly what all films do, they can generally just half from the week beforehand, it's had an increase, once again due to the re-release. So it's quite a big increase on percentage terms of what's actually happened here as well. And once again, what does that mean? Does it mean that it's then going to go back to normal and just it got an extra $2 million and that's it? Or is it now just going to slowly decrease down from here and actually get extra money? If it gets a 30% reduction week on week from here on out internationally, which I don't think it'll do, I think it'll get a bigger decrease than that, but if it gets a 30% decrease, it'll get around about $10 million extra internationally. So that's what we're looking at right now with a 30% decrease. If it gets a 50% decrease week on week, it'll get around about $5 million extra. So somewhere between the $5 and the $10 million figure, that's what I think the re-release of Avengers Endgame is looking like it's going to earn internationally. So on to the US domestic numbers. Infinity War earned an extra $6.2 million from here, day 66, to the end of its run. And it did look like Endgame wouldn't do that, but after this weekend's numbers, it does look like it will probably out-earn what Infinity War got from here on out. So $6.2 million, probably safe to say Endgame will earn more than that in the US market. So it's going to get more than $6 million in the US market. It's probably going to get $5 million internationally. I know I said between 5 and 10. I think the 5 is more likely, but $5 million internationally, $6 million more in the US market. That's $11 million extra. It needs $15 million extra to beat the low number for Avatar. I don't think it looked like it was going to get there, except on Tuesday we've got Spiderman coming out. So Spiderman is coming out on Tuesday. What's that going to do to further help Endgame? I think at the very least it'll help it get an extra couple of $1 million over where it looks like it'll get now, and so it'll probably beat the numbers.com total for Avatar and beat this $15 million extra it needs from here on out. But I still think it's going to be very tough for it to beat the Box Office Mojo number, which is just about the worst scenario I think we can get here, where there's perhaps a bit of a dispute as to whether or not it will be the biggest film of all time. I think it's going to beat one of these numbers. I think the other number is still very hard to do. It's possible. We'll have to see on Tuesday what kind of increase Spider-Man actually does give Endgame, if any. Okay, Tuesday's when we'll really find out what's going to happen. But I think it's looking likely right now that it won't beat the Box Office Mojo total, but it will beat the numbers.com total. And it'll be in this weird kind of middle ground, which I think will be a lot better off if it actually beat none of these numbers, or if it beats both of the numbers, rather than having this kind of grey area. Now, the Box Office Mojo figure, that's the number that a lot of places quote, but they don't actually have their own numbers. So if you look at a lot of articles people write, quite a lot of them use the Box Office Mojo number, but when you look into it, they're just getting it from Box Office Mojo. So they're not having a second source saying this is the number and Box Office Mojo just happens to have the same number. It's the Box Office Mojo number they're actually using. So I'm not sure what's happened here, because it usually gets its figures from the distributor, which would be Buena Vista or Disney. In fact, I think it was Fox that originally did Avatar, so Disney has it now, but Fox. And the numbers.com also probably gets their figures from there. So something's went wrong. We've got this $11 million gap. It's $11 million in a $2.7 billion film is not much, but it's becoming a little bit of a problem here as to whether or not this is actually going to become the number one film, or is it going to maybe become sort of the number one film, but not really. So anyway, time will tell. But Tuesday, that's the main thing to look for. Will Spider-Man increase Endgame at all? And just lastly here, there was an article out from Deadline a couple of days ago. I read through some of it in my previous video. I won't go through it again here. But they were saying they had some insiders claiming that if this doesn't work, the main way that it could still beat Avatar is to do another re-release and run it as a double feature with The Lion King. So I think that smacks of desperation. I know some people have said the current release maybe smacks of desperation, but I think doing another release after you've had a release that, if it doesn't work, that's getting a bit silly to just keep throwing the film out there to get a couple more extra $1 million here and there. But nonetheless, that was something they were kind of speculating on. So it'll be interesting going forward to see if they do like another re-release, or perhaps a proper re-release, have it out of the movies for a little while, and actually earn extra money that way. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.